Hey everyone, Dockwell here, and today we're going to be looking at 7.39C, which just dropped. And it's kind of funny because I obviously did the tier list last week, and I actually didn't expect them to put the C patch out. It is a very small patch with nerfs like across the board, so it's not going to change like a ton in terms of, it's not a wildly different patch, but I feel like they just came out with the B patch like 2 weeks ago. Maybe it was 3 weeks. I was actually kind of surprised. Now, it is something where the TI qualifiers did just end, but we're inside of another tournament, like in the middle of it, so now there's a C patch, so that's kind of interesting. But usually, because there's been so many tournaments recently, they don't really care if they're dropping these patches in between tournaments, but it is a pretty small patch. But anyway, we're going to go through all of the things that are in this patch. Like I said, it is pretty much a nerf patch. Like, very few things got buffed, actually. So it kind of evened the playing field a little bit, which I think was generally good. So just starting off, general changes, I would not really pay attention to these. These are really not that big of a deal. They're not that important, honestly. So you can just pretty much ignore them. Item changes are important, though. So Orb of Venom, the poison attack no longer has True Strike on the attack, which is pretty huge. I mean, that was a big part of Orb of Venom. People were just buying Orb of Venom in general by itself sometimes. It wasn't like super popular, like every game all the time kind of thing, but it was popular enough that people were just getting it as a casual, even starting item. So I don't know if that's going to go away completely, because True Strike isn't super important early on in the lane or the game, because there's not a lot of evasion and these kinds of things that are happening, but it is important. It can have some impact. So it's a small nerf that I think generally was needed. Same thing with Blade Mail, just one armor decrease, but it was a very, very good item. A lot of heroes were buying it. Blade Mail Radiance was a huge thing. Then we have Hurricane Pike, and when I first read this, I thought it was a pretty huge nerf, honestly, but it's not as big as I originally thought. So Hurricane Thrust buff provided to the wearer when targeting an enemy is now dispellable. So when I first saw that, I was like, oh wow, that's insane, because one of the big things with Nullifier is obviously really a lot of those saving support items don't work. But if you build Hurricane Pike as like a drow or some other ranged carry, the Hurricane Pike still works even if you're nullified by pushing an enemy away from you. So you get pushed back, the enemy gets pushed away. I thought that wasn't working anymore, and if that was the case, I was going to be like, dude, this is insane. Hurricane Pike is not a dead item completely, but fairly bad now, and it has a huge counter, but that's not what's happening. The push away does still work. It's just that there was a buff that you get, or there is still a buff, obviously, but not if you're nullified, that you can basically attack them from infinite range as long as you have vision of them. You can no longer do that if Nullifier is applied to you. And I don't think it's one of those things where Nullifier is a good enough item, or it's like worth buying it just to dispel that specific thing. It's just kind of like a happenstance small Hurricane Pike nerf, because this item is very good, because a lot of ranged carries are good right now. So that's much needed. It is a very good item, so it makes sense. It's a small nerf though, but it kind of makes sense how they did that. Then Harpoon, another kind of thing where that draw forth initial projectile, like basically going and grabbing somebody, you can now disjoint that. The problem before was it didn't really matter what you did. You basically, as soon as it hit you, you were just getting pulled in. But now there's actually some skill involved where when you see it, you have a little bit more time to react. I think that definitely is necessary, because it was very annoying. Like, if they got that on you, there was nothing you could do. And so now you can actually do something to kind of avoid just getting dragged in, or like, especially with Magnus. I just always think about Magnus. Like, if you see him blinking in and about to grab you, you can at least have more time to get out. So that can be definitely very important. And then Phylactery and Conda are just terrible items ever since they nerfed them a couple patches ago. So now they're buffing them. I don't know if this is going to come back into the meta that much, because it really has to do with not only this item being good, but the fact that this is now only a caster item really makes it a lot worse in general. I mean, before it was like a caster / right click item. Now it's really just a caster item. I will say I do think it's a little bit undervalued though, because it does have a break component. And if you don't have a break on your team, and you do have some kind of, you know, caster magic damage hero, which a lot of different teams have at least one of them, getting a Phylactery into a Conda might not be that bad. In obviously those specific situations where you have a caster and you need break, I mean, this can be pretty good. I just think it should be, or could be, bought a little bit more than it already is, and getting these buffs does help it. And I think it is interesting and a good place. Like, I didn't really like it, despite the fact that it was good, when it was like this weird caster but also right click item. I like how it is now. I just think they do need to buff it a little bit to get it back into the meta. And I think once it sits at that like good spot where casters are buying it because they need break and they want some damage, I think that might be a good spot for this item overall, and a good concept. I actually like the concept and how they changed it here. Then next, as always, we skip neutral items because they literally don't matter at all. And I know that's a little bit of a meme, but honestly, you just pick the ones that are best for your specific hero at the time. Neutral creeps, not really going to focus on those either, but then we're going to get into hero changes, which are the big things, and it's just nerfs across the board, honestly. Like Axe, not big nerfs, just talent nerfs, but still nerfs. This is a very good offlane hero. Bat Rider nerfs as well. This hero's finally coming back into the meta, and these aren't big nerfs by any means. I mean, it's Agdam's Shard building damage decreased by 1%. That's not a lot, but it kind of is annoying when we're finally seeing Bat Rider back in the meta a little bit and they nerf it. I mean, I don't think it was like super broken or anything, but hey, whatever. I mean, again, not huge nerfs, and maybe you could argue that it was needed. Then Beastmaster, I think they're just trying to kill this hero off completely. I think it is still decent, obviously. It's not as broken as it was a few patches ago in the other patches, but they keep nerfing it. They kind of want to get Beastmaster out of the meta, especially the pro and high level meta, because it just feels like this hero's always good. So I don't mind seeing Beastmaster kind of get nerfed into oblivion. Same thing with Bristleback. It feels like this hero's always coming back into the meta no matter how many times they nerf it. So Snot Rocket has been nerfed, and just Nasal Goo in general is nerfed a little bit. So I don't know that this is enough to complete. Who knows? Like, these are not big nerfs by any means. So Bristleback, Beastmaster, they might not disappear completely, because despite this, viscous Nasal Goo nerf, overall, you can still go for the like damage right click build, and you're going for a different facet anyway. And the duration decreased from 6 to 5. Like, that's not a huge nerf. It's 1 second, not a big deal. You can still get the stacks running, you know what I mean? So it's not the biggest thing, but it is a nerf that makes sense. Then Chaos Knight, this is an interesting one because I know people were trying to play it like support-ish, maybe off lane. The Shard can be good at times, but did it really need this damage reduction? I don't know, on the Illusion. I just don't think this is necessary. I don't think this hero is good enough to actually warrant this. Maybe I was just behind the meta and this is like giga amazing support. I know someone said that in one of my videos, but that would have been cool to have that. Like, it'd have been cool if this was a 4 position. Now, this is not a huge nerf, obviously, but I'm sure if it was getting picked as a support, this Shard is a big part of that, so now it's a lot worse, so now it's probably just a dead hero in general. Then Clinks, this is not a big change. Crystal Maiden, this is actually a pretty decent buff. I mean, you're not buying Ag Scepter a lot. You would love to have it, of course, but it is pretty expensive compared to other things. You need a lot of defensive items. You almost would rather have BKB sometimes, but having it so that you can get this freezing field or the frostbite in the freezing field off more often because of this delay or application decrease from 2.5 to 2 is pretty significant. So I don't know if that's a huge deal, though. Then Darkseer was a very good offlaner, so it makes sense they're nerfing the slow and the Wall of Replica a little bit here. I don't know, again, these slows, movement speed things, they do matter for Darkseer because this hero is a lot about movement speed in and out and stuff like that and slowing the enemy, especially when you put the wall down and all that kind of stuff. But is this a huge deal? I don't think so. Just like everything in here, just small, minor nerfs that make this hero a lot less, maybe not A tier, maybe B tier instead. And then Dark Willow, again, this is another one sort of like the Chaos Knight. I know people were saying Dark Willow is pretty good, maybe I underrated it in the tier list, but I don't know, the mana cost decrease is only 10 mana, but it's a spell you're using a lot to, you need it to be safe and stuff like that, so it can have a big impact on you, and I don't really know that it was necessary, because Dark Willow, I mean, not to say it hasn't been in the meta, but it hasn't been, like, giga broken for maybe, or, like, really, really popular for, like, a year or two, so I don't know. It's one of those things, I don't, like, hate the change, but I don't know it was necessary. Then Death Prophet, this might be the biggest loser of the patch, honestly, because she was the biggest, riser of the last patch. She was just dominating probably S tier, very good hero, off lane and mid, and base armor decreased by 1, not a big deal. But Ag Scepter Ghosts no longer slow enemies. That's actually huge. Now, it is a small slow, don't get me wrong, but this hero is really all about just running in and having, high movement speed with the ultimate going and clicking and just like, spirit siphoning people and all this kind of stuff. So those little slows add up, especially with the attack speed that you were getting here, which is now decreased from 40 to 30. So all these things just kind of add up to this hero being significantly worse, I would say. Just the fact that it doesn't slow at all anymore and your attack speeds decrease, that's just an overall Ag Scepter nerf. And I think that was the thing that was making Death Prophet a lot better. I still think this hero is actually pretty decent, but who knows? I mean, this might be enough to actually kill the hero completely. I don't know. 30 attack speed is still pretty good, but just this slow is a huge, huge nerf. Then we have Disruptor. These aren't really that big of a deal. I'm not really going to focus on that. Doom, 0.3 strength decrease is significant, but again, I don't really think that's huge. People were playing this obviously as a carry, so I think this is enough to make this hero Not maybe Giga broken or anything, you know, scaling into late game, having a billion HP, but it's, again, that's not the biggest of deals. Earth Spirit, they're buffing it a little bit, but they kind of nuked the hero, nerfed into Oblivion, so I don't know if this is enough to bring the hero back. Enchantress, small buff here, you know, 10 attack speed, slow on Untouchable. Is that a big deal? Gyrocopter, not a big deal at all. Hoodwink, this hero did need some buffs, but 0.1 on the stun, yeah, don't talk to me about that. Then Kez, they're literally memeing me on purpose. They're directly targeting me. All of the Valve employees watch my videos every time. They always tell me. I have direct contact with Gaben himself, and we talk all the time. And they said, everyone here hates you now because you're criticizing us and how we're balancing Kez. So look out for the next patch, and we're going to meme on you. Because basically, yeah, they buffed the Echo Slash, you know, mana cost decreased, that's great. And then the Impale duration decreased from 0.6 to 0.5. Did they need to do that? No, they didn't. It doesn't really actually do anything. 0.1 second is not a big deal. But they decided to nerf that just to be like, haha, look, we're nerfing this as a meme directly at me. The funny thing is, I'm obviously kidding, but in some ways, I mean, I'm not saying people watch my video. Like, obviously, I don't really think that in some real way, but it is kind of funny. Like, if someone actually did watch that and then just like, oh, we're taking it from 0.6 to 0.5 just to like make me mad. Because it's like, why you didn't need to do this? And it's just like funny. And then mana cost decreased from 50 to 40. Again, small, you know, buffs here, or a small little nerf, I guess. But I don't think it's enough to bring Kez back, but it does need more buffs for sure. Then Kunka, another pretty big loser of this patch. I mean, it is just one nerf. The wave distance decreased from 2,300 to 1,800, but that's pretty big. Because this was kind of the thing that you would get instead of having, like, this was just your added control. And it still is, don't get me wrong. But this positioning, like, positioning spells are huge. And already taking out the tidal wave, not the tidal wave, whatever it was. This is called tidal wave. The tidal storm thing that it had on the Ags like a year ago was big. But it still came back into the meta. But this was a huge positioning control spell that is now a lot worse, significantly worse, I would say. So I think like positioning people out of, you know, catching people with tidal wave in their base or vice versa. If you're in the base, it's just not going to be as good anymore. It's okay, certainly, but that could be a pretty big deal in Kunka. Then Lich, small damage increase, whatever. Lone Druid Bear, not a huge deal with the HP. Monkey King's another one. It's just one nerf, but the movement speed on Mischief down to 8%. I feel like that's a pretty big nerf. I mean, obviously level 1, it's up 2%, but I think this could be a pretty big nerf. Now, it's not like end all be all, like how much are you in Mischief, but still, I mean, that does have significant, like you're never really going to go there for movement speed necessarily. I feel like 8% is not great. Where to, okay, 1 agility, like stop. Naga Siren, base intelligence decrease, like what is this? This is another, this is like, again, they're just like memeing on us here. Like what is that? 100% this is a meme. Like you're not convincing me otherwise that this isn't in there just to make people mad or like troll people like me and others. Nature's Prophet definitely needed a nerf. I don't like seeing this hero as a support. Honestly, I don't even really like it on my team either. Like, I just don't like it in general. Like, I don't want this hero to be a support. I want this hero to be a core, to be like an offlane or a carry, split pushing, doing like core things. I don't want it like doing weird heals with the sprout, like annoying people. Like, I don't know. I just don't love it in general when it's a support. So I like that it's nerfed. Next, this damage reflect is important, don't get me wrong, but I don't think it's enough to make the hero good. Like, the hero just completely died once they took away its ability to farm creeps. Pango, small nerfs. Feels like this hero always gets nerfed. PA, another one where they're trolling us because Blur, cooldown rescaled. Okay, so now it's 50 seconds. But maxed, it's worse. So I get early, it's better by 10 seconds, but it doesn't really matter because this is like a late game hero. Like, yes, I guess early on in the lane, but you're not even taking, are you taking Blur in the lane? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what even is this? But you don't need to do this. I would say, yes, fan of knives, the debuff is no longer dispellable. Okay, whatever. But I actually think if you take this in totality, this is a nerf to the hero. And this is why, you know, people got mad at me when I criticized how they patch and stuff. But right here, this is a perfect example. I think this is a microcosm of the previous Kez nerfs, which is that I think seeing the whole big Kez nerf, it's hard to see when, you know, it's all these nerfs and buffs and changes, like what's actually going to happen, right? This is a perfect example because it's two small things. It's just like a Blur change and a fan of knives. And overall, everyone knows since they changed this the last patch, this hero's dog shit. It's absolutely terrible. It's not good. It's probably one of the worst carries in the game. People are still picking it because, I mean, at low MMRs and stuff, if you get your items, you can still like carry the game by That is still possible on this hero, but it's just not nearly as good as it once was. the higher MMR you go, the worse it is for sure. And that was always the case, but now it's especially the case. But anyway, not to digress too much, this hero did need buffs, right? But if you look at this blur change when at max level, and you look at this overall and how like insignificant the fact that this was dispellable is, like, yes, this is important. It is a very good shard to break people and stuff. Don't get me wrong. But like, I think in totality, you could argue that the fact that this is worse at max level and this is not that important and early on, who really cares about this, that this overall is actually a nerf to the hero. And I'm not definitively saying it's a nerf, like overall in totality, but the fact that you could even argue that, the fact that that might even be in play is kind of the issue. You know what I mean? Like, that shouldn't be the case. Like, if you're going to do this, just make it 45 seconds max, like just make it there and then change the earlier levels to be better. You know what I mean? Like, and that's kind of the issue here is it's like, we're going to change it, but we're not actually going to fully go all the way. It's like, dude, just make it 45 seconds across the board. Who cares? Like, who really cares? You know what I mean? Why do we have to make it 50 across the board? Just make it 45. Anyway, so I know they've been trying to troll me with all these changes, and now they finally got me to rant about one of them in a non-funny way. Then PL, doesn't really matter. I know they're like trying to buff the Ag Scepter and stuff to me. Oh, you're spawning more illusions when you run a certain... Nobody cares because you took away the other Ags, which was the only reason this hero was even semi-viable, which it wasn't anyway. And now that's gone, and this is terrible, and it's still bad, and it's not going to be good. So I don't think... I mean, unless... And hey, don't get me wrong, I could be delusional, and this could be amazing for some reason, but I don't think that's true. Like, this is not good. Primal Beast has been kind of dead for a while. It feels like it tries to come back into the meta periodically, but then it just ends up being like, there's better like tanky offlaners. And so small buffs, not a huge deal. Puck has been good for 50,000 years, so it makes sense they're nerfing it. Again, waning rift max distance decrease by only 50, but that's something. I think this Ag's Shard bonus damage, though, is pretty significant. 15 damage when it was 35. I mean, that's pretty big. But again, these are small nerfs across the board. Puck definitely needed it. It keeps getting nerfed, but somehow keeps staying in the meta as like an S tier mid. Again, because it's been so good for so long and it is still good, I feel like it might still be S tier, even though it's getting these small nerfs. Pugna, I don't know that it needed this buff with the ward duration, but whatever. Sand King, again, a dead hero. They kind of nerfed it into oblivion. I think I had it in like F tier or something. So it makes sense they're giving it more damage, better pulses, or more frequent pulses and stuff like this. But again, these are so small in this kind of small C patch. I don't think that's enough to really change it from anything maybe from an F to like a D tier hero. And then Shadow Shaman, this is kind of a meme because this is one of those heroes that a lot of these heroes that are good, like Puck, like, you know, Axe, some of these other heroes. I mean, Axe didn't get that big of nerfs either, but Shadow Shaman is far and away like the best support, and they just decrease the armor by 1 and the intelligence by 2. I don't think that's a nerf. Like, it is a nerf, don't get me wrong. Like, armor is important, especially on intelligence heroes and supports, but like, does this do anything? I don't think so. I think it's still a very good hero. Snapfire, this doesn't matter at all, to be honest. Like, 10 damage on the burn, whatever. Spectre, this is actually a pretty big nerf for reality. Like, having it cost mana can be huge. There's not a lot of situations where you're like mana drained and you want to get out or whatever and you can't, but it is important. Like, 40 mana is not nothing, especially on the hero. So I think that's a big deal. Sven is another one. You know, this can be a big deal. 5 seconds on God Strength, that's huge. 30 seconds is not a long time. So, and Spectre and Sven are two heroes that, yes, they were good, don't get me wrong, and Sven was kind of on the upswing, and I actually think Sven was a little bit overrated and Spectre even underrated, but the fact that they're getting nerfed is a little bit surprising to me. Like, I don't know if this is necessary. It's not a huge deal, but especially for Sven, like, I wouldn't mind seeing Sven around in the meta for a little while just because I feel like it's not been good for a long time. Techis, small buff because his hero's bad, but again, is that really that big of a deal? TA, some nerfs that aren't huge, but I do think Psionic Trap, like, the vision was huge, and it is still huge. Like, just the fact that you have all this vision, like free wards and stuff that cost almost nothing and then provide a slow. Like, when someone tries to go kill it, you can just slow them, and silence and all that stuff. It's a big deal. So now that you're not seeing nearly as much, it's kind of important because, you know, you stick it on a ramp or something. If you don't place it right in the middle, or if it's a big ramp, they could maybe get around it. Like, you might not see it if they're just like going on the one side. You know, they click in this one area and the pathing goes around the side and you only have 250 vision, so it's not that much. You know, this could be very, very significant just for the warding in general. Just, it's a big nerf, I think. Even though it's like 2 lines here, that's a pretty decent nerf on one aspect of TA. Terrorblade definitely needed nerfs as well, but again, not huge. You know, base damage by 2. I mean, worse in lane and stuff like that, whatever. Tiny, another nerf because they keep nerfing the hero because it keeps staying in the meta somehow. So the flight duration is decreased. Just means that you're not having as much stun time overall, which it's not a huge deal, but it is something. Tusk, whatever, agility gain decreased, like by 0.2. Like, come on now. Underlord, movement speed bonus increased. I don't think that's a big deal, especially because at max level it's the same. Undying, definitely a good hero right now, so they're nerfing Flesh Golem, move speed decrease, and then the talents. But again, I don't know if this is the biggest of deal. Maybe this will take it out of like core offlane role, but is this big enough to do that? I don't know. Maybe it'll still be there, but just not as good. And then Venge, again, I don't think this is huge. Base attack speed decreased, but like, I mean, yes, that's bad for Venge offlane, and maybe even support a little bit. But the support, are you clicking? Do you really care about that? I don't know. This is the bigger one, though. Agnum Scepter Illusion, damage taken increased by 15%. That's pretty big. I already don't love Venge as a hero. I think it's a little bit awkward. Sometimes it can be, like I said in the tier list, a great addition to your team if your lineup already has pretty much everything. But I don't really love it in pubs too much. And now that it's taking even more damage and it's even like more punishing to kill yourself by jumping in, I think that's a pretty big nerf, to be honest. Then Visage, better familiar armor, not a huge deal. Wind Ranger talent, whatever. Winter Wyvern, base damage in by 1, like who cares? Like 2 damage or whatever. Wraith King, this is pretty big deal because, I mean, the skeleton armor from 3 to 2, that's kind of big because these skeletons are really, really important for how this hero works and pushing and everything. The difference is, how much are you really right-clicking or using physical damage to kill the skeletons? I feel like for the most part, you're using magic damage a lot, so I don't think this is actually as big as I, first said, but it does have some impact because this hero was still getting picked, was still decent. And then finally we have Zeus, another meme. Base intelligence increased by 1. Doesn't mean anything at all. Who cares? Another huge meme. I feel like this is definitely like a meme patch where they're just memeing us because there's no way that they think like 10 of these, 10 of these intelligence increased by 1, decreased by 0.1. There's no way they think this is actually real. Like they're probably just like clowning on us, to be honest. So that is the patch. That's kind of the overview of what you need to pay attention to. I kind of spent time on the things I think that are most important here. So again, small patch overall, not too many buffs, mostly nerfs across the board. And I think well-deserved for a lot of the good heroes. A few weird nerfs that, like I said, Chaos Knight and stuff like that I don't necessarily think they needed a nerf, but they weren't that big anyway, so not a huge deal. But yeah, a very small patch overall kind of evens things out, which I like to see these patches. These are the kind of patches I don't mind. Obviously, sometimes I like to see big patches too, but small patches are nice just to like even the meta out a little bit, and that can have drastic shifts. Again, I think, not to repeat too much, but I think the biggest loser, honestly, might be Death Prophet. That hero might be like kind of gone from the meta. We'll have to see how things play out. But anyway, guys, that's the 7.39C patch. Let me know what you think about the patch in the comments. As always, if you like the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.